Hey, everybody, welcome back to Simple Country Lawyer. I'm your host, Bill Ryan. I'll be talking about law and politics and the politics of law. So, thanks for joining. Let's go ahead and dive on in. And today's episode, I'm going to be talking about um, one man in the media, many men in the media, and immigration. So, unless you've been sleeping under a rock for the last couple years, you will already have known that Elon Musk bought Twitter in late October of 2022 for about $44 billion. Now, in the course of the year and a half or more, or almost 2 years after that purchase, Mr. Musk would go on to drastically alter the internals of the company, the way the company operates. First, I think as part of the deal, it went into a private corporation. Even preceding that, most of the investors in the company were mega billionaires, if not states or state trusts. So the deal from the outset was a power play, right? It was a South African immigrant who, by any means, got wealthy in this country, used his wealth, I would say, ill-gotten gains, to then purchase. I would say at the time, and probably still today, the most important social media platform, if not media platform, on the planet. And that's because it tends to have a tremendous impact on all media. One and two, it tends to be kind of a democratic force in political discourse, in the sense that you can at least say anything that you want to say within the bounds of the algorithms, without so long as the algorithm doesn't boot your account, right? Um, Now, we watched Mr. Musk use this platform to essentially uh, shift the political discourse during the election to the right, right? And that kind of brings me to a study, or no, not a study. Actually, it brings me back to what a few analysts have kind of weighed in the last several months, from some investment firms and things, institutions of that nature. There have been speculation to suggest that during the course of Musk's ownership, that the company has declined to either half of its original value or more, so like almost 80%. So there's been some people suggest that it's worth potentially $10 billion at present. So again, he didn't buy this, this uh, social media corporation to foster democratic debate or push any type of democratic norms or democratic thought. Even he bought it to control discourse at his whim. And he's able to do that by eh, boosting engagement one with himself. He just has like this massive account on the platform, which allows him to drive a lot of conversations within certain kind of realms of the discourse. And two, it's just the platform has. I don't think anyone has really been able to comprehend or get a good understanding of the back end, like the algorithm changes. No one really knows who's being throttled. No one really knows, kind of the shenanigans that have taken place, in Twitter HQ. So, um, and there's been some empirical evidence to suggest it. There was a working paper by Timothy Graham and Mark Andreevich. It's titled "A Computational Analysis of Potential Algorithmic Bias on the Platform X During the 2024 Election." And if you, what they analyzed was various impressions, various engagement with Musk's account as compared to other people's accounts after Musk endorsed Trump in, I think, July of 2024. So if you look at, you can go ahead and pull up some of these graphs. There you go. So this one is just the favorite count per day. It's Elon Musk versus other accounts. You can see a very marked increase there in July, all the way up to the end of the election. The green line at the bottom being other accounts. You can see a marked increase between Musk's activities and everybody else's. I think the authors chalk it up to a potential structural change or an algorithmic change. I don't know that it's, it's. I don't know that you can actually prove it until you get into internals of the company. So the next one I think was a view count per day, and they all follow kind of the same track. And the third one was a retweet count per day. I mean, this one it shows very clearly that Musk had massive amounts more engagement. The report says that he exhibited a distinct and elevated engagement patterns compared to other accounts, particularly around a key structural change on July 13th, 2024. So, the author's going to say that Musk post received a market increase in visibility, meaning view counts, amplification, retweet counts, and user interaction or favorite counts that outpaced the general engagement trends across the platform. Uh, so I think anybody who watched or participated in the election process could see relatively clearly that Musk's ownership of Twitter was having a pretty sizable impact. I don't know if I haven't seen or been able to find any in kind estimates. I know that we all see that that tech the tech industry and billionaires in general, they dumped a lot of money into this campaign, right? This was a multi-billion-dollar campaign. Both parties had uh, ample funds to get their messages across. Uh, you know, but Musk, in particular, having this platform. I mean, how much extra was it? Half a billion? A billion? Can you really even measure it? I don't know. Now, if you look at the next chart, it'll show that Musk had an outsized impact on spending. I mean, in the big red bubble there is Elon Musk, and it says $242.6 million. Now, there's some estimates that fluctuate between I think 240 and 270. Again, I think when you factor in the in-kind donations of being the billionaire, having multiple companies under his ownership, and having Twitter under his ownership, I think that his in-kind donations or just the sheer dollar volume or dollar amount that he is should be accounted for having contributed to the election is way more than 250 or 270. So Donald Trump, I mean, sorry, excuse me. It's very it's very easy to get these things mixed up sometimes. Elon Musk effectively, while he might not have bought the campaign or bought the election for Donald Trump, he played an outsized role. And after playing an outsized role in electing a U.S. president, he then turned his gaze to French, German, UK, any other type of politics in the world where he can use this platform to meddle in their elections. He's going to do it, which is just mind blowing. To me, it's mind blowing after watching liberals for years freak out about supposed election interference by Russians, which I think was always way overhyped. I think with this is real. This is real. Musk is uh, an extremely wealthy immigrant from South Africa, an apartheid, previously an apartheid state. He and Peter Thiel both come over here. They're both heavily invested in tech. They're both doing a lot to help construct a surveillance apparatus in America to spy on everybody. So I think that when we're talking about campaign finance laws, I think we're getting way past the point of like, what are we talking about here at this point? This is not just a problem. Big money buys elections. Big money has been buying elections. What is the country going to do about it? Because if you let them continue, they will continue to buy your elections. So, Musk bought Twitter and leaned it right. Right now, you could all. I would also argue that there's a lot of cultural forces and a lot of media forces and a lot of just general trends in the broader U.S. Biden's a lot of Biden's policies, I think, were economically hamstringing people. So there was a lot of incentive, I think, for a lot of people who either would traditionally vote Democratic or just not vote Republican to then, you know, jump ship because they're, under the last 4 years of Biden's, a lot of that was kind of catastrophic. So I want to go, you know, I was just talking about how one guy has all this power. Now, this one guy overlaps with a lot of these other guys, but they all do their own thing. Now, what I'm talking about here are the subjects of a Bloomberg article. And no, I'm not going to go talk about the oligarch Bloomberg, but I could. I mean, just accidentally doing things in America, you could just bring up massively, insanely wealthy people who have immense reach. Was Bloomberg's money in any of what I'm about to read? I don't know. Probably. His money's everywhere. Billionaire money is everywhere. Okay, so this article was published on January 22nd, and the title is The Second Trump Presidency. Brought to you by YouTubers uh, and podcasters, including Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Logan Paul. Uh, okay, yeah, are mobilizing America's men to lean right. An analysis of over 2,000 videos show. Okay, so these unlucky souls who wrote this piece, and thank God for them, because I mean, somebody has to do it. This is a very necessary thing. I can tell you from just experience and being too deeply, enmeshed in a lot of these kind of media things. I watched this whole Theo Vaughn and like Dana White and Rogan. Like, there's a whole offshoot. What's the other guy? Oh man, I forget his name. The guy that Kendrick Lamar called out, um, Andrew Schultz, right? There's a whole group of these online people, and they're not responding to nothing. I mean, there's like a gaping hole for their type of content, I guess, or at least there's an audience for some kind of content that they fill the void for. Because it's if you just click to the next one, Troy, it says that according to Edison research, close to 50% of people over the age of 12 listen to a podcast monthly. Right? Rogan's 3-hour interview with Trump in late October drew about 50 million views on YouTube. That's reach. That I don't even know that traditional media can get pull those kind of numbers. So like there's a lot of reach with this alternative media, but this alternative kind of right-wing media or like male reinforcement media or maleness reinforcement media is really kind of it's its own ecosystem. So if you go to the next one, um roughly 80, so it says roughly 80% uh, of the audience on average is male for these podcasts, right? So 12% are women. 12 to 20% are women. Says that more in this election, more than half of men under 30 supported Trump. Now, personally, there, I got. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I don't want to spend. I'll probably spend maybe as segments of like 3 or 4 episodes hashing out the 2024 election because it's important, and because the people who lost it, they don't like to take accountability for their losses. So what has to be acknowledged is that the last month to 3 weeks of both of these campaigns was the Trump campaign hitting full stride, and the Harris campaign just not. Just not. When you're sending Richie Torres to Michigan uh, to talk to Arab Muslims and Palestinians and questionable voters about the genocide in Gaza, I mean, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're doing this, and he's, Trump serving fries at McDonald's, right? So, and I think a lot of what their last few weeks were there was a lot of these kind of podcast appearances, and I think a lot of this had been in the works for months and years in advance. So if you go to the next slide, the it says that Trump's appearances on these podcasts drew significant viewership across the shows, and that his shows were all number ones, and that all together his episodes drew more than 100 million views. That is a tremendous viewership. Tremendous viewership. Uh, Let me see. You can go down to the next one because I want to really kind of because this piece this explains kind of what they're reinforcing, right? And you can watch a lot of these guys' content if you want to. Like, it's really just it's not my kind of cup of tea, but they do all have relatively substantial audience. So it says that in two-thirds, the article says in two-thirds of the videos, broadcasters discuss voting, immigration, people identifying as transgender, institutional medicine, war, or the economy. The topic choices speak to issues of power, control, and identity that men face. They are very much about reaffirming young men's sense of self and their place in the world and what their place should look like. So they are propagandizing to a relatively pre-identifiable audience um, what they believe that this audience wants to have reinforced, right? And not only that, we don't know who's funding these people. They keep all of these things, as far as I know, all of these things are private. Many of them, I'm sure, receive substantial viewer donations. Um, we don't know how much these people deliberately, you know, uh, kind of cross pollinate their messaging. You know, I I do think one thing about this whole ecosystem and this strategy is interesting is that, like, a lot of these they talk about them, not, all these topics, it's immigration, transgender issues, medicine. I'm sure is talked about generally from a anti-vax or big pharma, right? I'm skeptical of these things. um I'm skeptical of, yeah, voting. Why is voting not a holiday? Of course, they're not talking about it like voting should be a holiday. They're not talking about immigration as in, maybe we should have higher wages for working people so rich racists can't turn poor people against immigrants. No, no, no. It's much more about fear and scaremongering about and otherizing uh, largely South American uh, or brown immigrants, right? We're not talking about white Canadians. So maybe some of these guys too. I don't. So it's it's these are it's a network that is like, I would even put, because I would put Musk as like a top tier kind of person, an umbrella that these kind of guys fall on, because a lot of these guys use Twitter's platform to they used and continue to use to get big. And we don't know if they work with Musk to artificially boost content, to throttle competitors' content, that kind of thing. So if you just go to the next one, kind of visualizes uh, just that Donald Trump got 113 million views. Andrew Tate had 80 million. Just I mean, kind of grotesque, right? Tucker Carlson, who even knows what Tucker Carlson believes these days? This guy's people who've been in the media for like 30 and 40 years. They'll say anything. It's kind of amazing to watch them operate, honestly. So um, okay, I think yeah, just go ahead and hit the next one. So it says, above all, the the broadcasters describe American men as victims of a Democratic campaign to strip them of their power, a comforting message to a dispirited audience. How about this? What they're really refusing to talk to is the fact that they are victims of capitalist dispossession and alienation. A lot of these players in this podcast arena know you're sitting at home and you're alone. They know what you're looking at on the internet or what you're doing in your free time. That like our modern advertising has most of us kind of, uh, predictable and pegged almost to a T, right? So this is an issue with framing in the article, right? Again, it's Bloomberg. You don't want to admit that there's massive market failures in America. Massive, just disgraceful. I mean, like levels of it's almost like partially failed state level, right? Like we can export mass war for decades as the homeless population increases. I mean, Tupac is screaming about this stuff in the '90s. It's like the civil rights movement was in the '60s and '70s, and here we are with a South Afrikaner immigrant in charge of Twitter, electing a president with a coterie of plants. All because no one wants to acknowledge that liberalism and capitalism are and have been in major crisis. Major crisis. And a lot of that is because of the elites of the last many decades, that Trump included. A lot, I mean, just a whole lot of them. So the main takeaway is that, you know, podcasts matter, networks matter. Um, having networks that are not talking about politics that you can close to election, that you can build an audience and then close to an election, kind of spring into action. Where they'll have a big audience and you can bring on candidates and things and talk about that. But here it's like you gotta see what the right's doing. Like when they're talking about that the broadcasters described American men as victims of a Democratic campaign to strip them as their of their power, a comforting message to a dispirited audience. Okay, that is a long-term strategy, right? That is a long-term right-wing strategy. They may not admit to it. They don't have to admit to it. The beauty of the modern American right is they don't admit to anything. They don't admit to anything. They just like they just kind of have power, and when things fail, it's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else's fault. So uh, they have this kind of online, semi-online, quasi-online type of uh, network or series of networks, and you know they are they are very effective they were very effective in the 24 election when the time came. 100%. So kudos to whoever came up with that strategy or participated in it. You did a good job at you know bringing about pretty terrible results. So now After the all of these media systems and money uh, ushered a second Trump presidency, one of his first actions was uh, an executive order titled, protecting the meaning and value of American citizenship. And essentially, what he's trying to do is, or what the administration is trying to do, is really inject a political lightning rod in what has been somewhat settled law for a century or more, or 2 centuries, or just a very long time, quite honestly, from several directions in this country. Um, so I think this is just an example of that. What they did with immigration is they like anytime the right's talking about immigration, it's always a multi-level conversation. So the real conversation that the people in power want is they want um, uh, to have workers angry at immigrants by suggesting that immigrants are taking their jobs or that their wages are low because of immigrants. Neither one of those things is true. Neither one of those things is true. So naturally, uh, when they're this I mean this campaign was a big, like, immigration played a big part of the campaign on the right, and on in the Democratic side. Like, the right got so rabid, like, and Democrats are so weak that they essentially just tried to, maneuver within the Vance Trump Musk framework, right? The pet eating in Ohio, which almost certainly never happened. The frequent calls of the criminal migrant, which is just when you're engaging in this kind of, I don't like it because I just don't like the dehumanizing that goes along with it, right? Immigrants are people just like everybody in America, quite honestly. And so one of the cases filed on January 20th was in New Hampshire. That one looks like it was filed by several civic groups, and it looks like it's there's some motion hearings set for February 10th. Now, I think what was this? This was So this footnote 3 off of page 6 of a memorandum of law in support of the plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunction. Really, this is what one thing I like about, like, court opinions is not necessarily the judicial reasoning. Often it's very just unfulfilling. Where the court opinions and law review articles and anything really gets interesting is often in the footnotes. And if you look at this footnote 3, it says, I'm just going to read it at length and comment on it. So it says, Wong Kim Ark, or a case, also a 1898 case, also identified a fourth category that says members of the Indian tribes owing direct allegiance to their several tribes. That exception is rooted, and again, we're talking about exceptions to naturalization, to naturalized birth, right? So, meaning if you have two non citizen immigrant parents who give birth to a child, that child is a citizen, right? That has been law in the US and in many other countries around the world for a very long time. That is an inconvenient fact for nativists and writers. So, uh, one exception that they highlighted was just like, if a foreign diplomat's child is born, or some type of foreign dignitary is born, that child would then assume the nationality of that dignitary, right? So that's an exception to naturalization. So another exception in this footnote 3 is that it says the exception is rooted in the unique relationship that Native Americans had to the national government, noting the anomalous case of Indian tribes. says tribes were quasi sovereign alien nations, distinct political communities within the United States, but separate from it. And so a Native American born within the tribe's territorial authority was, although in a geographical sense, born in the United States, not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States any more than the children of subjects of any foreign government born within the domain of that government. Says Congress subsequently provided for Native American birthright citizenship in the, I guess, Indian Citizenship in 1924, 100 years ago, right? So, and I've read a lot of these briefs and some of these other opinions and things, and a lot of folks are it goes straight back to this a lot of references to this Wong Kim Ark opinion, which is pretty lengthy and goes through a lot of variations. So it says that, uh, further down, I think further in this memorandum of law in support of the plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunction, it says as Wong Kim Ark, not 1898 explains, the common law rule of jus soli has an ancient pedigree and was followed in the early years of the Republic. So it says, discussing the ancient and fundamental rule of citizenship by birth within the territory. It says, under this rule, it was widely understood that every person born within the dominions and allegiance of the United States, whatever were the situation of his parents, is a natural citizen. Okay. It, to me, it is very cut and dry. It is, to me, it's very clear. All right. But this is a thing that Trump and his people do. Anything that seems settled, they try to punch holes in. And often the stuff that they really, now not tax policy. Tax policy to them, it's settled. Need to go lower. Need to go lower. But if it's a racist policy, let's go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's see what we can do with it. Now again, now this is what they're attacking. This is not like the HB1 visas, right, for workers. They don't want to touch that. This is another layer of the immigration debate. When you're talking immigration, there's what rich capitalists and business owners want, and then there's what they just don't care about. And they don't care about any of it, but what they care about is cheap labor. So they want to make sure that H-1B visa program stays intact. And they don't even really care about this naturalization program. They just want to work up poor working whites and other races across the country who want to dehumanize immigrants and who want to uh, blame the problems of either mismanagement or just outright decades of corruption that have put the U.S. in this position on the weakest among us. I just don't like it. So there's this interesting kind of history. So it says that, um, let me see, it says that there was an infamous case, Dred Scott v. Sanford held that despite their birth in the United States, the descendants of enslaved people were not included and were not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution. After the Civil War, Congress repudiated Dred Scott and, in recognition to or that statutory protections alone might be insufficient, included the citizenship clause in the 14th Amendment. So it says that, but as noted, Wong Kim Ark already interpreted the phrase subject to jurisdiction to include just a few specific exceptional categories: children of foreign sovereigns and their ministers. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about earlier. So the general rule is if you're born here, regardless of citizenship of the parents, you have birthright, except in a few exceptions. And they are very limited exceptions. Very limited exceptions. The one that uh, in reference to native tribes, I think that just that little footnote in the regards because it talks about alien, they're alien. I always, anytime the Rogans of the world start talking about alien this, alien that, we're not taught. There's nobody coming down from space. It is It is the white supremacist culture of America gets so tied up in knots that it can't see past itself and everything seems alien. So you could just scream alien this, alien that, and in reality, all it is just it's just like a way to it's a way to I don't even know like otherize anything. The alien conversation. I might dip into that at some point, but I honestly believe that generally the alien conversation in the U.S. Has always been much more subliminally about immigration than anything about like aliens coming. Right? I think we just have elites that love to lie to us. So there was another case that was filed in by New Jersey state's attorney with a ton of others. And I think there was already a case in work there that was related to the case filed by the state's or the attorneys generals. So in this one, it looks like they're going to have some briefs due at the end of January, and there'll be some hearings, I think, in early February. So these are just a couple of many. Again, I think that I'll talk about this briefly, but I want to just so talk about the next one, which is one out of the United States District Court, Western District of Washington at Seattle. Now, this is a case where a judge actually ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, with the plaintiffs, which are Washington, Arizona, Illinois, and Oregon. As you can see in the next slide, says that they just, this is a challenge to the executive order issued on January 20th entitled Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. Uh, the next slide is about just the judge going over some fact finding. Basically, it says the plaintiff states residents are also irreparably harmed by depriving them of their constitutional right to citizenship and all the associated rights and benefits, including subjecting them to risk and deportation and family separation, depriving them of access to federal funding for medical care and eligibility for basic public benefits that prevent child poverty and promote health, and impacting their education, employment, and health. So there are harms, there are immediate harms. Um, and if you go to the next slide, it'll show you just kind of what the elements of a temporary restraining order are. Essentially, you just have to be likely to succeed on the merits. Irreparable harm is likely in the absence of relief. The balance of equities tips to the plaintiffs, and the injunction is in the public interest. So it doesn't. This is a very short opinion. It doesn't take long for the judge to dispense with it. If you look at the next slide, it just that's his reasoning, which is essentially the judge says there's a strong likelihood the plaintiffs will succeed on the merits. Um, that the executive order violates not only the 14th Amendment, but the Nationality Act. Says that the plaintiffs have also shown that they are likely to suffer irreparable harm in the absence of relief. So, and the balance of equities tips to the plaintiff. And after that, the says the next slide shows that the uh, court fully enjoined the defendants from enforcing or implementing Section 2A of the executive orders, Section 3A of the executive order, and Section 3B of the executive order. Now, I didn't do the whole thing in total because if you look at the next couple of slides, this is Section 2A, so it's the policy. So essentially, the Section 1 is just laying out the purpose. It's it's non enforceable anything. It's just like a rationale for the policy. This section two is the policy. Section three is the kind of heart of the enforcement. So you take away the policy, you take away the enforcement. It's pretty much DOA, right? So I kind of try to string all these together, um, just to highlight a kind of a through line, right? Which is immigration. You know, Trump is married to an immigrant. Musk is an immigrant, and they've both personally benefited from it. They've probably both been part, or their spouses have been parts of migrant networks of all sorts, right? And their politics dictates, or doesn't dictate. Nothing says you have to go dehumanize and target, essentially the weakest people in the United States. Um, but that's what they do. That's what they do. Instead of again, there are alternate realities that could have existed, could still exist, because the future is not written. If there's one thing about Trump buying, I mean, about again, Musk and Trump and Musk, who really knows right now? But if there's one thing about Musk buying Twitter, it's that he and other elites who are used to having near totalitarian dictatorial control over daily messaging across the United States could feel that slipping. They could feel it slipping. And when they felt that slipping, they said, Elon, go buy this. And he did, right? And then they're like, hey, all you little podcaster brats, you go talk about your cultural shit, but do it from a right wing perspective. And they did. And then when it was time for the ball to drop, they all it all did pan out for them. But make no mistake, like it's kind of crazy to think that the American right went to I mean, just has so much. The modern corporate media is basically right wing media. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, they're all basically right wing corporatist media. So the establishment has essentially all the infrastructure. Yet they still needed to buy more because things are failing so bad for so many people that they can't convince people not to believe their lying eyes. So I don't know where all this is going to go. I don't think anybody does. But one thing that can't happen again, I don't think, is Musk can't buy Twitter again. Right? Now, you saw what just happened with TikTok. Shut it down. Then it comes back online, but it's censoring everything Palestine. So talk to don't so you have to be very careful before you start talking about freedom in America. Very careful. Because if we're free, if we have free speech, why is so much wealth going to crush free thought and free speech? Why is so much wealth going to demonize migrants rather than confront actual structural issues with the modern American economy and political economy? Really, because it's not just the economy. As you can clearly see after this election, all politics is economics, and all economics is politics. It's kind of like law. All politics is geared towards changing laws. So it's inherent. All law is political. The real ruse that too many Americans fell for, I think, for over the last many decades, is this depoliticization of everything. Nothing was ever depoliticized. Wealthy people just consolidated everything. They've been doing what Musk did over the last 2 years, over the last 40 years in America. They've consolidated around everything. They control everything, So there we go. Yeah. In Musk we trust. Must we though? Really? I don't know. Actually, I do know. No, we don't. We don't have to do this. We do not have to do this. This can be a nadir, a low point, the lowest of low points, the bottom of the barrel. Or it can be a simple bump, a speed bump in a much more rapid descent or gradual descent. But make no mistake, if we're not ascending in this country, we're descending. And when we've got one guy in control of so much, I mean, it's up to you to decide where we're actually at. So I think that this is all, kind of, I think it's new to a lot of people. So we'll just have to see where we go. So thanks for joining. And hopefully you join in the future. And as for now, I'm going to sign off. So have a good rest of your day. And you can please like and subscribe. You can find me on YouTube at Simple Country Lawyer. And you can find me on Substack, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Simple Country Lawyer with no vowels.